So as you all know, my name is Caroline de Posada, and these are my Connect with Caro expert interviews that I love to do with people that I admire, that I trust, and that I want to share their story, their information with you so that we can learn and be inspired and just become the best versions of ourselves possible with all the information that we get. So today I have the privilege of bringing to you my doctor/friend, Dr. Marcelo Pereyra. I met Dr. Marcelo, I want to say 7 years ago by chance. My law firm, before I became a speaker and a life coach, my law firm was on the same floor as Dr. Pereyra. And I would walk by every day and see this chiropractor office. And we got to talking one day and he's like, oh, you should come and get assessed. And I had never been to a chiropractor before, had never explored chiropractic care, but I mean, he was on the same floor as me. So I figured I might as well just go in and see what he was all about. And he has been my doctor ever since. He isn't only my chiropractor, but he's a chiropractor for my 3 boys. He's been the chiropractor for my husband. It's been a whole family affair. And he's always been wonderful and kind with me, and just an amazing doctor who just really cares about patients and healing and nutrition and everything that is involved in health and wellness. And the reason that I invited him today is because he has such powerful stories. And his stories begin even when he was in the University of Florida, when he was studying. So we're going to start with that. First of all, Marcelo, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. You know, I admire you and I admire your family and everybody that I meet. I always say that when I get married and when I have kids, I want to emulate your relationship and your lifestyle. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I want to get started with a conversation that you and I were having just before our Zoom call started. And it was about your accident at the University of Florida, because you were introduced to chiropractic care in a very interesting way. So tell them about your motorcycle accident.
Yeah, so it's not just about the motorcycle accident, it's the process. And so I've always wanted to become a dentist. And that was my passion ever since I was little. I remember I have a younger sister and she's 3 years older. I mean, younger. And I remember making her eat Cheez-Its, like the little crackers to get stuck in her teeth, and grabbing little toothpicks and trying to clean her teeth, right? And so it's something, yeah, it's crazy, but it's something I've always been yearning for. I've always wanted to become a dentist. I always wanted to improve people's teeth so they can smile more. That was the purpose of me becoming a dentist. And so I went to University of Florida. I got my bachelor's in human nutrition, finished my bachelor's, and I was studying my DATs to get into dental school. And at that point, it was a group of us that would always ride our motorcycles. And we went out one day, beautiful day, beautiful sunny day in Gainesville, in the country roads. And I was leaning into a turn, and I didn't hit the turn at the right angle, and I went into a ditch. And when I went into the ditch, my motorcycle started to shimmy, and I envisioned myself laying down the motorcycle, me sliding, and the motorcycle going one way and picking up the motorcycle and continuing to ride like they do in the television shows. My foot hit a root of a tree, and it flung me about 100 feet. And I landed next to a sewer drain. The sewer drain was right here, and I landed right next to it. And immediately I wiggled my fingers and my toes, and I realized I wasn't paralyzed, but as I tried to get up, I couldn't, right? I fractured my clavicle, I injured my back, fractured my finger. And so I was in a sling and a cast at home, and a buddy of mine was a chiropractor. He said, listen, I think we should take some x-rays and see what's going on with your spine. And so I went to go hang out with him at the office, and I loved the interaction between him and the patients. And it was approximately 6 to 7 months later, I applied to chiropractic school, and I moved to Marietta, Georgia, to pursue a career in chiropractic.
Wow. So an accident like that changed the trajectory of your life.
Of everything I've wanted to do since I was a child. It was
and now you make people smile, but not by giving them Cheez-Its.
It's true.
You make them smile in a different way, right? By making them feel better.
Yeah.
Okay. So you started in this life of chiropractic care. And from what I read, you also dealt with Hashimoto's, right?
So in chiropractic school, with the stress and studying and working, my immune system started to dampen down. I started getting multiple symptoms. I started off with skin rash. in my face. I started off with a foggy memory, couldn't remember things. Pain in my joints. I started gaining weight, and I would continually go to the medical doctor, and I would let them know. I was like, something is wrong with my body. I just feel off. And they would run blood work, and everything would show up maybe a little bit high or a little bit low, but they said it was within normal range, right? They would give me cortisone for the skin rash and tell me to take Advil for the medication. I mean, for the pain in my joints. And so I did that for multiple months. And at the end of my chiropractic schooling, we have to do an internship at a chiropractic office. And I chose one in Mississippi, in Tupelo, Mississippi, where the chiropractors did functional medicine, did nutrition, and they also did chiropractic. And so they saw me and they said, there's something definitely going on with you. You don't look healthy. Let's run some blood work. And it was around 5 pages worth of blood work. And when we received the results, we plugged it into the system, and it showed that I was diagnosed with hypothyroid Hashimoto's, and it was just never diagnosed properly. And so we went through a specific protocol. I also, when we took x-rays of my neck, the nerves that come out of the neck that go into my thyroid were compressed due to the motorcycle accident. And so my thyroid wasn't functioning up to par because it wasn't receiving the signal. And so once I started getting adjusted and I started implementing the specific nutritional protocol, we started doing blood work, and we started seeing everything improve to where now I run blood work and it doesn't show that I have any Hashimoto's or doesn't show that I have any thyroid issues.
Wow. So you don't struggle with that at all?
Well, I monitor what I consume, because anybody that has hypothyroid Hashimoto's, gluten is one of the main triggers, right? Because it emulates the thyroid. And so whenever you consume gluten, it attacks your thyroid and also breaks down the gluten. And so I've eliminated certain things out of my diet to prevent any symptoms.
Well, and so, Dr. Sanchez, I like introducing good people to good people. So Dr. Sanchez and Dr. Marcelo have met because I made sure that happened. So
I have his business cards in my office, and I'm always referring patients to him. So.
I know he doesn't accept them because he can only get the Medicare, the viejitos, but you get viejitos in your office. But so Dr. Sanchez and I often talk about, we're doing RejuvaFast, and we often talk about Hashimoto's, and he always tells me that it's one of the most prevalent conditions that he sees, and he sees it over and over and over again, that people have they struggle with Hashimoto's. So I think it's so interesting. I don't know how many people on this call even know what Hashimoto's is or have been exposed to it or maybe even diagnosed with it. But if you have any questions about it, make sure that you use our chat and chime in and let us know. Are you familiar with it? Do you have any questions about it? Do you want to know more about it, about his struggles with it? Otherwise, we're going to move on. So you basically overcame that particular challenge of the Hashimoto's, and you felt better. I mean, I've never known you to be a person that is sick in any way. Like I feel like, to me, you're the picture of health, right? And that's really why I was so blown away by what you went through. And for those of you that don't know, Marcelo, and forgive me, I'm not going to call you doctor on the call. I'm going to call you Marcelo because you're my bud. But Marcelo, all of a sudden, I don't know how many months ago was this? How?
The beginning of August.
In the beginning of August, Marcelo, all of a sudden I got a text message and it was like, hey, have you heard Marcelo's really not doing well? I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, I mean, he's in the hospital. He's fighting for his life. He got COVID. And, it's interesting because by the time that he had gotten COVID wasn't such a big deal anymore. Like all of it, COVID I thought COVID had settled down. At the beginning, COVID was super scary, but by the time that you got COVID, lots of people had gotten COVID and people hadn't gotten so sick. And you did, you got so sick. And I remember at that time having those conversations that people always have, which is, oh my God, how could Marcelo get so sick if he does all the right things? How can Marcelo, the picture of health, all of a sudden, feel so bad? Like, how could he be fighting for his life at the hospital? And all these people started coming, like having these questions and these concerns. And when we go through that, our need to control kind of like almost feels like, well, then what's the point of even trying to be healthy? If a person like Marcelo is going to get sick, then what the heck is the point of in even trying to be healthy or trying to live a healthier lifestyle? Look what happened. And obviously you're here, thank God, and you overcame it and all these wonderful things. But I thought this is a conversation that has to be had, right? This is a conversation that has to be had about what you learned from that experience, from that process. Because when you are on a healthy trajectory, like you with the chiropractic care, it's easy to run with it and feel like you're invincible, like nothing could ever happen to you. And then all of a sudden you got sick. So tell us a little bit about that experience of how'd you get so sick?
Yeah. That's the great question, right? How do you get so sick? And so at that point, I got overly confident, I think, in everything that I was doing. So I was receiving chiropractic care once a week. I was doing acupuncture twice a month. I was doing IV therapy.
What is IV therapy?
IV therapy is you put an IV in and then they give you all the vitamins and minerals that you may need, right? So it's basically, instead of consuming it orally, you just do it intravenously.
Actually, I have someone on this call that was asking about IV therapy. So is that something that you recommend?
Oh, I highly recommend it, right? It's because when you consume vitamins, you only consume probably 30% of it, maybe 20 to 30% of whatever you're consuming. And so when you do it through IV, you're consuming all of it. And so it's highly recommended. It's a great, so I thought, right? And so, right. It just allows the body to absorb as many nutrients as it possibly can. And so I was doing all that. And so my father got COVID. My father's 76 and he got COVID and he felt sick for 2 or 3 weeks. I would go and drop things off at his house, the little immune boosters that I had with the elderberry and the zinc and the probiotics. And I had this whole little protocol for everybody. Everybody would call and I would give them this little protocol and they all did well. And so at that point, there was a friend's birthday and we all went out and it ended up being a bar where there was tons of people. Nobody was wearing masks. Everybody was out and about. And out of everybody that was there, I think it was like probably 9 of us, 9, 10, 11, 12 of us that ended up catching COVID. And we ended up getting, I'm assuming the Delta version, right? Because they don't tell you what version it is, but I'm assuming it's the Delta version. And so I started feeling slightly under the weather and I thought it was a sinus infection. And I was like, oh, I have some runny nose. And all of a sudden, I decided to take off. And so I started checking my O2 saturation. And I called a couple of medical doctors that I know, and they said, if it drops lower than 90, I think you should go to the emergency room just in case. And I think in the emergency room, they were giving, I'm not sure at that time, but it was like a shot. They were giving you a shot, and I forget what it's Veritrol, or I forget what it was. It was like a combination of something where a lot of people were going to the emergency room, getting the shot, they felt better, and they would go home. And I started feeling some pressure in my chest. And so I drove myself to Baptist, and I sat in the little waiting room, and they checked me out. They said, stand up and walk and come back. And they checked my O2 saturation and it dropped below 90. So they said, I don't think you're going to be leaving. And I was like, what do you mean I'm not leaving? I'm just coming for a shot and going back home. So when I graduated chiropractic school in 2011, I had not taken an antibiotic, an Advil, a Tylenol, a Motrin. I haven't taken anything since 2011 till last year. Not one form of medication, right? Everything was through supplements, everything was rest, everything was just allowing my body to heal naturally. And so when I got there, they said, you're not leaving. I said, all right, well, what's the next step? And said, well, your O2 saturation is dropping. We need to take an x-ray of your chest. And so when we took an x-ray, they found out that I had bilateral pneumonia. So it was pneumonia in both of my lungs. And that's why my O2 saturation was dropping and I had trouble breathing. So I said, okay, I think it's worth me staying to be monitored. And so right when they admitted me, they said it's pretty severe. I remember getting a tickle in my throat. And when I started coughing, I couldn't stop. And when I couldn't stop, I couldn't breathe. When the coughing attack started, when I was in the emergency room. And so they said, you're staying. You're going to stay as long as you need to stay. And we're just going to monitor it and take it day by day. And so every day was the doctors coming in and the nurses coming in to assess. And they would literally say, I don't know I don't know how long you're going to be here. You have bilateral pneumonia. It's not so much of the COVID, it's the pneumonia that you're having that we're worried about. We don't want your lungs to get filled. And so then they started just pumping me with medication, right? So I just started getting steroids, and I started getting anticoagulants, and I started getting the resveratrol, and it was all the medication that I haven't taken in the past like 11 years. They gave it to me in one day, right? In 1 week, they just gave me everything. But it was, I remember laying on the hospital bed and starting to cough, and you think, you wonder, right? Is this gonna be my last breath, right? And so they didn't use a ventilator because at that point they already knew that people that were on ventilators usually wouldn't come out of it, right? That's something they did early on, and a lot of people passed because they were on ventilators. So that was on oxygen. But I remember forcing myself, saying I have to get up and I have to walk to the door. I just kind of make it to the door and make it back just to get some movement in my body. And so there's this struggle of, I can't allow this thing to take over my body. I got to overpower it. And so it's constant struggle of walking to the bathroom and coming back, and being a success, that being a win, because you're able to walk to the bathroom and breathe throughout that process. And then other times you can't make it to the bathroom. But it was interesting. It was interesting to know that your body can go from feeling great to maybe potentially your last breath in the matter of seconds. But it was humbling. And the reason I say that is because I was prideful, right? When people would ask me, how are you doing? I'm great, right? Take a medication. You don't need medication. You don't need X, Y, Z. You don't need this, or you don't need that. Take these supplements, just rest, right? Let's receive some chiropractic care. And so it humbled me knowing that you can do all the right things, and yet when it's your time to experience whatever you're going to experience. And so it was interesting, but I realized that my body was off prior to that. And I felt it, I felt that I was tired. I was exhausted. I was yearning for a vacation, that I never take vacation. And I didn't do it because I just didn't want to close the office to continue to serve the patients, right? There was people coming in, and I was like, somebody may come in with some sort of concern and I need to be there for them. But my body was telling me, time to take a vacation. It's time to take a vacation, take a little break.
And you were feeling that before you.
Oh, it was like a month and a half. It was like a month prior. My body started to tell me, Marcelo, it's time to take a break, take rest. And it was in the back of my mind, but I didn't honor it. And one of the things I learned throughout the process is honoring what the body is telling you, right? Because it's like, you can choose to take a vacation, or your body's going to force you to take a vacation.
That's
right. I took a vacation. I took a 2-week vacation. It just wasn't the vacation that I was yearning for. It wasn't the vacation that I desired. Right?
Your story sounds eerily a lot like the story that I had when I battled pneumonia in December of 2019, going into 2020, right before COVID hit. And I had a similar experience where I was, feeling great. I thought I was feeling great. I thought I was doing everything I was supposed to do. I exercise, I eat right, I go see you, I take my supplements, all the stuff. And I had the same experience. Like from one day to the next, I wasn't like a little sick. I was like dying. And I got to the hospital, and same thing, I went in thinking that I had broken a rib, and it wasn't that I had broken a rib, is that I was septic. And I had no oxygen in my lung, and I had, they had a mass in my lung, and there was all these things that were wrong with me. And I too experienced that, just trying to make it to the bathroom, try to make it back, all that kind of stuff. And when people look at people like you or people like me, they think, well, gosh, how do they get sick? How does that happen to somebody like that? But interestingly, as you say your story, that at that time when I got sick was also when I was publishing my book, and it was at the launch of my book, and I was busting my behind. I was working crazy hours. I wasn't sleeping. I was really trying to push my body, push myself. I was treating that book launch like a sprint. And that sprint, you know, ended terribly for me because I ended up in the hospital and feeling terrible. How do you, based on that experience, what is the advice that you would give someone who's going about life and thinks that they're fine and thinks that they're healthy? Like, what are the signs? You know, how do you know that your body's even trying to tell you something?
It's funny because I get a lot of women that come into the office, moms, and you guys are the perfect representation of this because it's so honorable because you guys push and take care of so many people. But you guys negate your health is what I realize a lot, right? When women come into the office that are mothers, it's, how long has this been going on for? Oh, it's been going on for years. I have a strong pain threshold, right? Is what I hear a lot. Of course, you guys are delivering babies, right? Of course, you have a strong pain threshold. But you guys come in at the last minute, right? And it's because you guys put yourselves last, is what I've seen a lot. So all the mothers out there, I honor you and I praise you, but you need to start taking care of yourselves because you guys are, you know, taking on a lot. So just to throw that out there. But it's whenever we're stressed, whenever there's fear, whenever there's worry, there's actually a pathway in the body that your inflammation in the body can increase and linger up to 3 days after you've had an extremely stressful experience. So if we're constantly living in stress, if we're constantly living in fear, it actually increases inflammation in the body that can linger up to 3 days. And throughout this past experience with COVID, everybody is constantly living in fear. So that means that everybody's constantly inflamed. And if we're constantly inflamed, it decreases our immune system. And so that's one area, right? It's like, what are we thinking about every single day? The second is, what are we putting into our mouth? And so if we're consuming foods that are causing inflammation, that's two things that we're doing to increase inflammation in our body, which decreases our immune system. And then as a chiropractor, the goal is to make sure that the brain is able to send signals through the spinal cord into the nerves to communicate to all your organs and all your cells and all your tissues. So as a chiropractor, we're looking to see if there's any misalignment anywhere in the spine. Now the brain and the body aren't communicating efficiently, so the body isn't functioning to its full potential. So now it's, what are we putting in our mouth, right? What are our thoughts and how is the body functioning? And so it's if we're not mindful about that, it's leading to destruction without us even realizing. And then we're not talking about, you know, parasites and bacteria and other things that are within our bodies as well. So I think those are the main things that we get to look at. It's going home at the end of the day and asking yourself, how did I feel today? Did you feel energized? Or are you feeling exhausted? And if you're feeling exhausted, the question is, what are you feeling exhausted about? And is there anything you can do about that? What's your support system? Like, I love you have a community here, right? Because you have a community of women that their goal is to support each other and to empower each other and to really lean on each other. And so I think community is extremely important because if something is going on, it's being vulnerable and honest and open enough to confide in someone and say, this is truly what's going on in my life. I don't know what to do about it. Is there anybody in the group that can support me in this process?
You know, and it's crazy you should say that, Marcelo, because it's so true. And yet it's, even in community, it can be hard. It can be hard to be honest. It can be hard to be vulnerable. It could be hard. I remember I was serving some of the girls in our community, and one of them said, you know, what I come here most is for the emotional support. And she never posts anything about her emotional health. And I said, but that's interesting because you don't ever post about the emotional health. And she says, no, I can't post about it. Like, I don't feel comfortable posting about it. But when other people do, I know I'm not alone. And I thought that was such an interesting thing, that she couldn't put herself out there. Like, but she values and appreciates and honors those that do. And in that way, she is supported. Even though she can't say, like, this is what I'm struggling with, will you help me with that?
Yeah.
Something that I did want to ask you about, and I wanted your take on this, because, you know, we talk about stress, and when you live with constant stress or constant fear, that was one of your markers. But here's the thing, and I want your opinion on this. I've read and I've studied that stress in and of itself is not bad for you. It's the way that you interpret the stress, right? So if you are a person who is interpreting stress as a negative event constantly in your life, like, then that interpretation of stress is what alerts your brain that there's something wrong and raises the inflammation. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me on that?
I agree with you 100%. And then just a quick question. Do you want us to answer the questions that people are asking now, or do you want to do that at the end?
I'm gonna just answer this question, and then let me look at this. Yes, we'll answer that at the end. I'll answer that one at the end.
So yeah, so stress is healthy, right? So we want to increase stress. It all depends on what your interpretation is at that moment. And so I think it's the consistency of the stress that you're having over an extended period of time. So when you look at an animal or a deer and it starts to graze, it sees a tiger or a lion coming after it, its adrenaline kicks in, right? It needs to leave so it doesn't get eaten. So your adrenaline comes in, your cortisol kicks in, it's able to do whatever it needs to do, and then it realizes it's not in harm's way, and so it stabilizes itself. And so if we're living in an environment like that, it's perfectly fine.
But which is why exercise is so important.
Well, yeah, and so exercise, you also have to be careful, because if you're if you're chronically inflamed and then you're exercising, it increases your markers, which can also be a bad thing. So if you analyze blood work immediately after someone works out, it'll look like the person is completely unhealthy, right? Because it's changing their biomarkers. And so you have to be mindful about the type of workout, with how much stress you have, how much inflammation you have, what time you're working out. So being mindful about the type of workout also serves you, right? Working out at nighttime is going to increase your cortisol levels, which isn't going to allow you to sleep. And if you don't sleep, you don't heal. So if you're not healing, then it's leading to the same vicious cycle. Right. Where they've done multiple studies where you should be working out early in the morning so the body can recuperate at night. But back to your stress question, I think it's just, are we consistently living? What's our baseline, right? When you look at a graph of threshold, and this is high and this is low, we should all be in the center, but most individuals are constantly living up here. So anything pushes you over the edge, and that's when it leads into trouble. So you want to be in that baseline. It's like, are you always living in fear? Are you always living in worry? Are you always living in shame? Are you always living in guilt? And so if you're always living like that, then you're always chronically stressed, which is the bad type of stress, right? If you have things that something happens to your child, God forbid, you're a little stressed, he's okay, and it drops down, then that's perfectly fine. You need that stress for the cortisol to kick in for you to be able to activate certain glands and tissues in the body to respond to something, but we don't need to consistently be in that state. And I think
one thing that I think is interesting is the words that you used when you were talking about stress. The words you used were fear, you used shame, and you used guilt. Fear, shame, and guilt. I mean, those are three emotions that I feel like should not be part of anyone's daily lifestyle, right? Like, no one should live every day with fear, shame, and guilt. And yet it seems like that you see so much of that, right?
Yeah, I guarantee if we were to ask somebody on the chat right now, do they live with that? I guarantee somebody would say yes. I would guarantee probably a good amount of people would probably say that at some point consistently. They're like, man, I do feel something, unless they've gone through, unless they're with you, of course, and you're helping to break all those things. But the majority of individuals, there's something that they're consistently it's just, their heart isn't at peace, right? They're just like, something is off. I don't really feel,
yeah, because you're not saying busy. You're not saying, busy was the word that came to my mind, right? Because busyness causes stress, or too much on your plate causes stress, or intensity at work can cause stress. Those weren't the words that you were using. You were using these emotions that really, those are the ones that tear us down. And really, oh, I see a child. I love you too, sweetheart. And we have people on the chat that are saying yes, that they agree with what you're saying, Marcelo, that they agree with those emotions.
Yeah, and I think it's because when we're busy, we're busy. It's like, yeah, I'm busy, you're busy with the kids and you're doing stuff, but is that extremely stressful where you just feel like, oh my gosh, I just can't handle everything? No, I think it's certain things that we hold on to, certain triggers that that triggers something inside of us, and we just live in that, something feels uneasy. It's like, I feel anxious. I feel something is off, right? Some people might not even be able to define it. But those are the things that increase the inflammation within the body.
And then when you are, like in your case, for example, you were doing acupuncture twice a week, you're doing chiropractic care twice a week, you're watching your diet because of the Hashimoto's. So you were doing all these things. You were exercising, if I remember correctly, right? So you had all these barriers to protect yourself, but yet that there was something underlying that wasn't well. So tell us a little bit about what wasn't well.
I wasn't resting. I was focusing on work. It was like putting so much emphasis on work, and I wasn't really allowing myself to rest. It wasn't honoring the body. I felt tired. I felt my body just wanted to relax. And I didn't honor that. I didn't honor the rest, right? It was I felt it. I felt tired. I felt like my body was just carrying all this weight, right? And I was like, I have to work out and I have to do this. And it was like this mindset of I have to do. But it wasn't a balance. It's not so much balance, right? Because I don't know, I like the word balance. You can't really balance everything out. There's always highs and lows with everything. But it was just honoring what the body is telling you. And if you sit at night and if you close your eyes and you just ask the body, it's like, what do I need? It's amazing. You'll be amazed on what it'll tell you. You'll be amazed on your body saying, I'm exhausted. And you just ask yourself, why am I exhausted? And it'll come to you, right? Through prayer or through meditation, whatever you do. In my case, it's prayer. If you sit in silence for a little bit, your body will let you know, right? You don't have to be a monk or right, somebody that lives in a monastery to understand. If you just give yourself a couple minutes at the end of the night and say, I'm exhausted, what's on my plate? You'll be able to write it out and you'll know. Now the question is honoring it and developing a community of people that can support you in that process. And that's when it becomes like your group, finding someone that you can rely on, just the way you and Betsy are, right? It's like, it's just two people that, and Francis, it's like people that you can really allow yourself to be honest and real with, that are going to support you in whatever you're going through, right? Raising 4 kids and having a husband and having a book coming out, and there's stress, right? It was just a matter of time where your body was going to tell you, hey, listen, I need you to slow down.
That's a tough one because, and especially in the community, there's this paradox between rest and exercise. And when, Betsy and I had this conversation once. She called me the other day and she's like, how do you discern when you need grit versus when you need grace, right? Like when you need that grit to push through and actually get to the gym because you're overflowing with excuses and inconsistency and, all these other things that are not letting you feel better, or when you need just grace to allow yourself to sleep, to rest, to unwind, to sit in silence, to sit in prayer. And granted, I think that we need a little bit of both all the time, but it's a little bit hard to discern when one person is feeling overwhelmed by all of it. Like they need a little bit of exercise, but they also need the rest, and they need they are exhausted and they are feeling shame and they are feeling fear. Like they're bombarded with all of it. So when in that case, like where do you even begin?
Yeah, what's your opinion? I think the question is, what's the purpose of what you're doing? Right? You start off with why are you doing it and what's your purpose and what's your intention behind it? Right? What's your intention when you're sitting down and having a conversation with someone? What's the intention of going to work? What's your purpose of creating something? I think it's just really defining and then really just putting things in compartments and saying, okay, maybe I can go half an hour to the gym, but I can do a 5-minute maybe walk, right? And so I'm still getting some sort of workout, and just kind of be mindful of what you're consuming. It's really, I got to get this book out, but realistically, how is this treating my family? Right? Like you sit down and make sure that there's support, because if you're creating a book and then you're negating your family, the question is, what's the purpose of really getting that book out? It's, or you just say, hey, listen, I'm getting this book out. This is the purpose behind it. Do you guys support me in this process? And now you have your family cheering you on and bringing you tea, right, as you're writing your book. And now you feel the love because they're actually supporting you. Yeah. And so it's finding out what the purpose and the intention is, and then having the support system to get you where you need to get, right? It's like you wanted to get this book out. It was your purpose. It was, you know, you've been doing that for since like I remember it. It's something that you wanted to do. But I think is just asking yourself, and sometimes it may be, you know what, I really want to get this book out, but I need some rest. You know, I need to really rest, and I'm going to give myself a day or two just to clear my mind, and then I'll get back on it, right? So giving yourself a small period of time to recuperate, re-energize, and then get back on whatever you want to do.
Yeah, and I love what you said about the 5 minutes, because just today we have one of our core lifers is on this call. She posted on our community about how today she made the decision that she was going to go out for 5 minutes, even if it was just for 5 minutes, because she needed to start doing something, right? She needed to start. And we talk about that in the community all the time. Like when you think about exercise, this doesn't have to be you don't have to go to Orange Theory and be there for an hour, or run a marathon, or run 3 miles. Like you can, it's more about moving your body and creating flow and creating movement and creating that giving yourself that time, which your body needs so much. So I love the fact, oh my God, there we go with Betsy.
And the answer is yes, Betsy.
In that case, I should go work out.
So yeah, I think it's great that you talked about that, right? Because it doesn't have to be, and to your point, sometimes that much intensity in that much exercise may not even serve you, right? So you don't even have to give yourself such a hard time for going out for 5 minutes, because that may be exactly what your body needs.
And it depends what the intention is. So if you want to become a bodybuilder, or if you're trying to compete, right, 5 minutes isn't going to do it, right? If you're looking for movement, if you're looking for just physical movement, then yes, you can go for a walk. And I remember listening to a psychologist one day, and she was in a crowd, and she said, how many people do not like to work out? And it was like 80-something% of the people raised their hand, right? They're like, I don't like really working out. And she said, okay, you in the front, you don't like to work out, come on stage. And so she brought her on stage, and she said, I want you to close your eyes. And this one's for Betsy. I want you to close your eyes and visualize a time that you enjoyed working out, but it wasn't sex, right? So she said that to the lady. And so the lady closes her eyes, and she's like, I can't think of anything. She's like, think of a time that you're just doing physical movement and you enjoyed yourself. And she's like, I'm kind of embarrassed to say it, you know, something's coming to mind. She's like, just let us all know. And she's like, well, I love putting on music and cleaning the house. She's like, I grab the broom when nobody's there, and I'm cleaning and I'm dancing. And she said, well, instead of going to the gym, have you ever thought about doing like a Zumba class? And she's like, no, I never really thought about it. And she's like, would you enjoy that? And she's like, I think I would. She's like, okay, Zumba class. And then she asked someone else, you know, come on stage. And this other guy comes on stage, and he's a little, overweight. He was pleasantly plump. And so he's sitting there, and she's like, I want you to close your eyes and visualize the time that you worked out. And he's like, I don't like working out. And she's like, visualize the time where you were with your friends and you're having a great time. He's like, I remember when I was in high school, and a group of us, you know, just played basketball together. And it wasn't so much the basketball, it was the community, but I developed a workout, and I felt good. And I haven't done that in years. And you know what? I really want to do that again. And she's like, well, that's your workout. And then she brought up someone else, and she's like, I love walking the mall, right? And she's like, right? And she's like, okay, we'll get some, you know, women and go and walk on the mall, just maybe pick the pace up a little bit. And so it was this beautiful idea of working out. It doesn't have to be the gym, right? Working out could be anything that has to do with physical movement that you enjoy doing. And she brought another guy up, and he wants to do CrossFit because he liked competing with other people. And so she was able to pinpoint people's workouts without it being a workout, right? It was something fun that they enjoyed. And so whoever's on here that doesn't like going to the gym, you know, you can do that little exercise. Close your eyes and visualize the time that you did something physical, or you would like to do something physical that you enjoyed. Maybe it's just going out for a walk on the beach, right, at night, just walking in the sand. It's a heck of a workout. And enjoying, you know, the waves crashing on the ocean and looking at the moon.
Zoe says dancing is for her. She loves the dancing.
I love dancing.
Well, I mean, you know, they do say that the more you enjoy something, the more likely you are to continue doing it, right? I mean, so if you find joy in something that you're doing, if you find joy in eating healthy, this is one of the things I always tell my girls. I don't ever want them to be dieting. I want them to be learning how to love eating healthy foods, because if you learn to enjoy eating nutritious, healthy foods, then it's not a sacrifice, and therefore you can do it more. You're more likely to make it a lifestyle. Same thing goes with movement. That doesn't mean you have to enjoy everything that you do. Sometimes you do have to have that grit, and you have to push through, and you have to do it. But where you can find joy, it's important to be able to find that joy. So I want to take you back just a little bit, because I think it was really the purpose of this call, and I want to make sure that we hammer it home, which is this idea of doing all the right things and not getting the results that you want. Yeah. And I don't want the call to end without us addressing that, because I think that's something that people hold on to so much. And I look at it as a sense of wanting to control things, right? So it's very easy to say, when people say this all the time, well, he smoked cigarettes and he lived until he was 100 years old. And then this guy ate healthy, exercised every day, and died of a heart attack at 32, right? And people always use these examples. And
sure.
I want to know, did you feel defeated? That's what I want to know. Like, did you feel defeated when you were in that hospital and you dedicated your whole life to being a healthier version of yourself, to doing the right things, to monitoring your diet, all of these things? Did you feel defeated by having failed you, so to speak?
I felt disappointed on not honoring my body when it was telling me what to do. That's what it was. It wasn't so much that I felt defeated. It was like, I should have listened to my body when it was telling me to do what I knew I should have done. Right? It's like, that was it. And I've thought about it and I've prayed on it. And it was like, oh, why did this happen? And why didn't, it's like, I really didn't pay attention. I really didn't listen. It's like the example is when you have a loved one, right? And it's like, what's the regret if they were to pass? I didn't tell them I loved them. I didn't listen. I know I should have done X, Y, Z, but I didn't do it. It was the same feeling. It was like, I knew that I should have rested. I knew I should have stopped, but I made something else a larger priority than what I knew I should have done.
But you see, I'm going to challenge you on that a little bit, because hindsight is always like that. In hindsight, there's always things that you could have done. Of course, you could have listened to your body more. Maybe you should have slowed down. Maybe you should have rested. However, what if there was purpose in you going through that experience?
There was purpose.
So what would be the purpose of you having gone through that experience?
To me, it was allowing myself to be humble and knowing that. So there was a difference. Patients would come in with a certain condition, right? So I've been through, so just a little bit of background, right? So dyslexia ever since I was a child, learning disability, right? Challenging, school was extremely challenging for me. Parents got a divorce, right? So I was in the middle of that divorce. And so I witnessed that. And then all of a sudden it was the motorcycle accident. And then all of a sudden it was the hypothyroid Hashimoto's. And so it got to a point when I was like, man, I'm finally overcoming a lot of challenges that I've had in that 2011, right when I graduated chiropractic school. It's like everything I'm doing is finally adding up. And so when patients come in, I was empathetic towards them while they're having these conditions. People, when they come in with hypothyroid Hashimoto's, you have all sorts of conditions, and people would go see their medical doctors and they'd be like, my doctor thinks I'm crazy, right? Like I have all these different symptoms, but nothing pulls up in my blood work and I can't figure it out. And when I sit down with the patient, it's like, no, you're not crazy. You do have certain symptoms that are showing up, and let's figure out exactly what's going on. And so it was this constant empathy towards patients, and it brought me to a point of like, let's just follow this protocol and you're going to get better. Like no matter what happens, you're going to get better. You're going to get better. You're going to get better. Just do this, and you're going to get better. What I didn't take into consideration is when something comes to, something is thrown at you unexpectedly to I just was, it goes back to me.
Something that you can't control.
Yeah, it's something that you just can't control. Because I felt like I had everything dialed in. It's like somebody comes in, I know the protocol, I know the procedure, let's do X, Y, Z, and these are the results that we're going to be getting. And so it's living in a sense of control because I didn't have control of so many things in my childhood that I finally felt that I had a sense of control over something. And so it humbled me to know that I can do whatever I can do, but at the end of the day, it's surrendering to the process. And so whatever ends up happening, I'm surrendering to that. And then I just get back on the bandwagon and start again, right? Because I didn't have control over what happened. And so it was like a surrender to the process. And am I going to still do the same thing? Yeah, I'm still going to take care of myself. I'm still going to honor my body. I'm still going to treat it like like a temple, because I want to be able to just live the healthiest lifestyle I can. To me, eating certain foods doesn't make me feel well, right? So it's like, I can smoke cigarettes. Yeah, but does smoking cigarette doesn't make you feel good? Right? Does it enhance your life? And so to me, eating those things and living that lifestyle, I didn't feel well doing. I don't want to live on medications for the rest of my life. I choose not to live that lifestyle. And so it was losing a sense of control and then surrendering to the process and removing my pride that I had of, I didn't have to take this medication. I've been living this lifestyle and look at me. And I did it what I've realized, it was so subtle that it wasn't really seen by a lot of people, right? You look at me and you're not like, oh, you're not like, oh, Marcelo, he's so prideful and he's arrogant and look at him, right? It was not something that was seen,
but it starts to kind of like build on itself.
It was
you're used to getting, you get to a point where you are used to winning, like in that sense, right? Like you help your clients, your patients, you help yourself, you have overcome these things. So you kind of get used to being on the winning end, on the winning game. And then something comes and knocks you off your feet and is like, yo, we don't have all the answers here, buddy. You can't control everything that comes your way.
Exactly.
Yeah. I find that to be such a powerful lesson. It was something that I really wanted to get across on this call, because so often people quit doing the things that they should do because they are so reliant on results. They care so much about the result. So when they don't, when they don't lose the weight, they stop eating healthy or doing the exercise. Or when they don't feel better, they stop, like instead of changing the formula or trying something new, they just feel like they just go back to old habits and old patterns. And it's because there isn't that surrender. It's like they think that by doing this, they have to get this result. And in reality, we don't have all the answers. The only thing that we can do in this life is improve our odds, right? We can try to improve our odds, but you and I can get cancer tomorrow and that's it. We can do our best, but it can happen. I just learned today about a guitarist who just all of a sudden got this condition and now he can't play with, he's like half paralyzed and can't play out of nowhere, totally healthy guy. Things happen that are beyond our control. So then what's the point of doing it? And I guess the answer is that you do it to improve your odds and because you want to maximize your life while you do have some control, right?
Yeah. And so somebody asked earlier if I did muscle testing. And so I actually did a course months ago on muscle testing. And so the answer is yes, we do muscle testing. And basically the muscle testing has allowed me to assess which is the primary cause or issue with each person. And so when somebody comes into the office with pain, we would assess and check out, we take x-rays and see if it's structural. And there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And I think I told you about this, but what I've been realizing a lot lately is that people are coming with pain and there's a lot of emotion that's being locked and held within the body. And so a lot of people are coming in with pain within different areas, and it has nothing to do with their physical ailment. It has to do with an emotional connection that they have within certain areas. And so the reason I'm saying that is because I've realized that there's hierarchies of healing. And in my case, I was so focused on the structural part, on the IV, but I wasn't really focusing on the emotional and the mental part and how powerful that is. And of course, yeah, you know, I'm certified in hypnotherapy, and we do something called regression, which is to get to the root cause of the problem. But now I've realized that depending on each person, the hierarchy of healing changes a little bit, right? And so it's just sitting down and assessing what's your goal, what's your mission, what's your purpose, and what do you desire for your health goal? What is realistically what you want? And mine was, so it was a lot on the physical part, and I was negating a lot of the mental component, spiritual component.
That's actually one of the things that I love the most about you, Marcelo, is that I've seen you evolve over the years. I've seen you grow and embrace different philosophies and try new things and get into hypnotherapy and get into the regressions and get into the emotional side. Every time I come to get adjusted, it's like something new. He's like, when I come to get adjusted, he's like, I'm going to try this thing on you now. You know, and it's like, I've seen you evolve so much. And I think that's part of living a holistic, healthy life, is that you are not, and you and I actually had this conversation today. So funny story, this afternoon, Ryan, my son, had a fever, didn't feel well. So of course, naturally, most people take their kids to the pediatrician. I take them to Marcelo. I'm like, align him and make sure he's okay. So I was with you, and you and I started talking about sticking to a particular diet or to a particular regimen or to a particular whatever. Remember, you and I were having that conversation today. So tell them how you felt about that, about just being rigid and sticking to one formula.
Yeah. So the conversation that we were having was just being okay with the change, being okay with different seasons of your life, being okay with maybe having one game plan in one season and then shifting it, right? So not every diet is for everyone. Everybody talks about the keto diet and the paleo diet and the Mediterranean diet and this diet and that diet. And so it may serve you at one particular area of your life, but then it's also be okay with shifting to something else. I'm not for the sticking to one thing. If it's working for you, yes, right? Don't get me wrong. If you're sticking on a diet and it's working for you and you notice the changes and you feel amazing on it, then go for it. But a lot of times people get frustrated because they see the latest fad and they're like, this isn't really working for me. I'm not going to diet anymore. Well, maybe that's not for you. Let's sit down and let's find out exactly what your process, what your protocol is, what you desire. Let's create a lifestyle instead of just a diet. And I think that's what you propose a lot, right?
Yeah.
With, a lifestyle.
Yeah. And that's what you've done with enriching yourself with these other areas, right? Well, it's like, okay, well, there's structural, but maybe there's some emotional, and maybe there's some psychological, and maybe there's some nutritional, and maybe there's, you know, and you start embracing different, you start expanding, you're widening the net. And the more you widen the net, the more you can help yourself. Right?
You said you realize that everybody is a bio individual. Everybody is different. And so what you think is going to work for everyone, it doesn't. It does not work. And there's hierarchies of healing. And so when you can sit down with a person and really ask them, what do they really want as their health goal? And then you can sit down and through these new protocols, it's amazing, because I had a person come in today and she's like, my back is bothering me so much. And all of a sudden I take x-rays. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with your back. What were you doing when this happened? And she told me a story, you know, carrying her daughter. And I was like, well, what happened with your daughter? I was like, something isn't adding up. I was like, there was an emotional incident that happened with your daughter around the time that this back pain started. And she's like, she starts laughing. And she's like, why are you asking me that? I was like, I don't know. Something is not lining up. And I feel like there's an emotional component that's attached to what you're telling me right now. And she's like, there is, but I'm not ready to talk about it right now. And so in her case, right, the emotional component is the hierarchy of her healing. And so I could have put her on a chiropractic program. I could have said, oh yeah, look at this little misalignment that you have right here. Let's get you on a program for however many visits and let's adjust you. And then know that within a certain period of time, she's not going to get the results that we expect, and then go through a whole process and try to explain X, Y, Z to her. But that's not her primary issue, right? Her primary issue is that there's an emotional component that needs to be addressed. And if it's not with me, then I can find somebody, Betsy or somebody on here, that can sit down with this young lady. You know, maybe I should actually, now that I'm having this conversation, I think she needs to be part of your group so she can experience your process. But the purpose of that story is that each person is different. Each person is going through different experiences in their life. And I've realized what happens a lot with the medical model, or with, I wouldn't say the complete medical model, but people go into a specific doctor for a specific thing, and the doctor will look only at that one issue, right? You have your urologist, and then you have your cardiologist, and you have your pulmonologist, and then everybody is referring you to a different person because they can't figure out what's going on. And before you realize it, you feel like you're losing your mind, and then you're still just as unhealthy or stressed as you were at the beginning because you weren't able to get the results that you wanted. And so the reason I'm expanding is because I'm realizing that the goal is to get to the root of wherever the problem is. And once you identify the root, then everything else starts to fall into play. And so I'll keep doing that. And if God forbid something happens to me health-wise, I'm still going to continue doing what I'm doing, because at the end of the day, it's identifying the root so people can live a healthy, happier life and just be in a state of joy and peace.
Yeah. Well, so I love that. And I think that's a beautiful way to end this call. And also the idea of, like, in every season, something can serve us, right? So I think that the biggest lesson, the biggest takeaway from this call with you is just keep looking for answers. And when you don't have answers, allow yourself the ability to surrender, and at the same time as continue trying, right? Like you surrender, and then you look for more solutions, and you never give up, right? I think that's the idea, because you're never going to stop trying to eat healthy and trying to live a better life and trying to better yourself, no matter what happened to you. And even when you get hit with some bad things that come your way.
I remember somebody saying that there was this, as we go through life, we have two different closets. And one is a closet of joy and happiness and gratitude and seeing all the amazing things in our family. And the other one is all the negative things. And so which closet are you constantly stepping into, and which closet are you constantly reminding yourself of the experiences? And so the closet that you're standing in the most is the one that's going to allow you to express the emotions and the feelings. And so just because you have one experience that, just because you eat at one restaurant and the chicken isn't great, doesn't mean that you're not going to have chicken for the rest of your life, right? You get to experience a different restaurant until you enjoy that meal.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So keep going into the closet of the good stuff.
Yes.
Keep going into that closet. All right. So for those of the people in this call that are dying now to go see Marcelo and have an evaluation with him, because he's absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Francis, for putting that on there. Marcelo is, Marcelo, besides your Instagram, how else would you like them to contact you if they wanted to schedule a consult or come see you? Learn about your services.
They can text us. Actually, we have somebody there that's always answering text messages, or we
give me the number.
786 441 5956.
I should know that by memory. Okay, so there's the number. You guys can text it. The name of Marcelo's business is Mind Body Wellness Chiropractic Studio, and he does chiropractic care, hypnotherapy,
massage.
Massage. He took that away from me for a little while, but it's back. And you guys can meet him in person. And I had Rosemary here who said that this has been such a rich conversation. Could we do a part 2 with Marcelo? And yes, Rosemary, we absolutely should have a part 2. Rebecca loves that you see kids. Yep, he sees all of my kids. In fact, this afternoon while I was there was also an 8-week baby there with us.
So cute.
So cute, and getting oh my God, No, but that wasn't the one that I saw today. That's a different one.
Another one, but look at that little pose. I couldn't look at
So
this.
cute. That's so cute. So he sees babies, and he sees big boys, and he sees adults. And for anybody that wants to have a consult with him, you'd be in good hands, because more than anything, he's a person who is driven by heart, and that is more important than everything else. So thank you, everyone, for coming. I want to honor your time. It's 10 o'clock. Everybody needs to go to sleep because you guys need some rest. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next Connect with Caro. Bye. Thank you, Marcelo.